everybody, and welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna be reading Amnesia Ticci Toby X FEM listener up in here. Let's get straight into the recap from chapter 27. So, long story short, guys, we got back from the grocery store after getting supplies to survive and shit. Started raining. We got a little wet. We went inside, started looking through some stuff, which revealed that Ticci Toby snuck in a bouquet of flowers, and we didn't even notice it somehow until we got home. And which we loved and got a little flustered, rightfully so. And out of the kindness of your heart, when he started noticing, when he finally noticed that his bandages were hella wet and he needed to replace them, you decided to help him out. He directed you to an area where you can go get them real fast somewhere in the cabin. You got it, brought it back, opened it in front, and discovered that it was, in fact, a plushie, a raccoon plushie, to which you got even more flustered. And then it started getting a little intimate after that, to which, sadly, it got cut a little bit short, cut a little too short when some blood dripped from his arm onto you, and then that's when y'all actually was like, okay, I actually might need some bandages, and y'all got to that instead. Sadly, kind of ruining the moment, but at the same time, the tension, guys, it's there. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how much I loved reading that part. But anywho, that's the recap, guys. As for any warnings, it'll pop up about right now. We is in chapter 28, Piece of the Rain. 𝐀𝐦𝐬𝐚 gently wrapped Toby's arm with the gauze, making sure it was tight enough to hold but not tight enough to be uncomfortable. She felt Toby's heavy stare, and she hesitated to meet it. She took a bigger bandage and pressed it over one of the not very taken care of cuts. "How did you get all these?" 𝐀𝐻𝐚 asked. Changing the subject slightly, Toby itched his jaw. There was some stubble that was starting to grow back. "A lot of them are for me being clumsy or stupid," Toby said, looking down at his scars. "Some of them healed, others are newer. But some of them are from falling off my ATV or getting hurt on the missions I have to do," he said, rambling slightly. 𝐀𝐻𝐚's eyes widened. "You have an ATV?" 𝐀𝐻𝐚 questioned, pausing with one of the bandages in hand. Toby nodded. "Yep, I stole it," he smirked, causing 𝐀𝐻𝐚 to roll her eyes. "Do you even know how to drive it?" she asked, putting the bandage on a spot on his chest. "I am a great driver," Toby stated as he crossed his arms. 𝐀𝐻𝐚 uncrossed his arms to access one of the small cuts. She put a few butterfly strips across the cut in the hope that it would seal them shut. "That's not what the scratches on my car say," 𝐀𝐻𝐚 said in a matter-of-fact tone. Toby rolled his eyes. "I wanted to show you my ATV, but now it's raining." Toby looked out the window, where the view was distorted by raindrops. 𝐀𝐻𝐚 followed Toby's gaze outside, and his hand slipped down to hold Toby's hand. What? Her hand. I'm sorry. Her hand slipped down to hold Toby's hand. Now that the bandages and gloves were off, she could see just how mutilated his hands were. His palms had thick calluses, and the skin on his fingers had a bunch of divots and bumps from uneven healing. Toby's eyes went to look at where 𝐀𝐻𝐚 was touching his hand. A small stab of embarrassment formed in his chest as she skimmed her thumb over his knuckles. He didn't let the feeling get to him as they sat so close. The silence wasn't loud or awkward. It was calm, maybe even peaceful. The sound of the rain on the metal roof was very relaxing, making Toby's frame unwind a bit. Toby wrapped his arms around 𝐀𝐻𝐚, enveloping her in his embrace. 𝐀𝐻𝐚 felt her cheeks warm as she was tugged towards him, her head resting close to his neck. She rested there for a few moments before biting his neck. Toby jumped slightly at the notion. Ah! He looked down at 𝐀𝐻𝐚, who was giggling eternally. A confused but amused smirk crossed his face. What was that for? Payback. Wyan snickered, wrapping her arms around his waist and biting him again. Hey, quit that, Toby said, trying to sound tough but failing miserably. He leaned his head away. Maybe you should learn to wear a shirt. Wyan bit his neck again, harder this time, and it was enough to leave a mark. Toby sighed in defeat before he was struck with an idea. He picked up Wyan around the waist and started to carry her towards the door. Toby grinned and put her over his shoulder. Toby? Wyan's eyes widened quickly as she felt him carry her outside. The drizzle from the sky started to soak her clothes. We just dried off. Put me down, Wyan said in a serious tone. But she couldn't escape a smile on her lips. Put you down. All right, Toby said before plopping Wyan onto the wet forest floor. She gasped at the cold rain that started to pour down on them even harder. Toby! She grabbed his wrist and yanked him down beside her. She forgot that Toby wasn't wearing a shirt, and now his bandages were getting soaked all over again. Okay, maybe we should go back inside, Toby said, and his hair dripping from the rain. Wyan nodded, and before she could get herself up, Toby scooped her up and hurried back into the cabin. The cool air of the cabin met Wyan's skin, making her shiver. Toby put Wyan on the floor in front of the furnace before searching for a lighter. Wyan hugged her knees to her chest, tucking a strand of wet hair, behind her ear. Cold? Toby chuckled. Toby took his thick coat from the table and draped it over Wyan as he started the fire. Yeah, a little bit, she said, gritting her teeth in order to stop the chattering. She pulled the coat around her to cover more of her body. The coat smelled like Toby, like a campfire and a little bit of musk. Toby was focused on making some sort of warmth for Wyan. He couldn't really feel the cold, but Wyan definitely could. Fire is hot, Toby thought, and it's easy to make. The small flame inside the furnace soon turned into a large fire, and Toby tossed a few logs in to keep it going. Wyan scooted closer to the fire, and Toby sat next to her, putting an arm around her shoulders. You're so cold, Wyan said, putting her hands on his cheeks. It didn't make him any warmer, and it was an odd sensation to feel the open scarring on Toby's cheek. Her fingertips seemed to graze on the edge of the scar. Toby's face lit up with blush, and he froze. I honestly couldn't tell. Toby shrugged, shifting a little to a more comfortable seated position. Feeling cold, Wyan pushed her arms through the sleeves of the coat, leaning slightly against him. The fire crackled, and the rain clicked on the roof. Toby started to relax against Wyan until there was a knock at their door. We're gonna go to a different point of view, guys, just to let you know. The police station was buzzing with Roger's case now that it had been brought out of the dark. Officer McKinney was in Detective Jardin's office discussing the new evidence. So, we're just going to send out a couple guys tonight to patrol around the forest that is just off of Denver, Jardin stated, leaning back in his seat. In this weather at night? That sounds risky. I mean, have you not heard of the things that happen in that forest? McKinney said this, crossing her arms over her chest. It's not going to be anything serious. It's meant to see if there's anything suspicious happening in those areas. Forget that paranormal rumor bullshit. That's just a story that parents tell their kids so that they don't try to go places they shouldn't be. Jardin scoffed, clicking a few files on his laptop. These files included a bunch of paperwork about Tobias Rogers, their only suspect. What if he's dead? How do you know that it's him? McKinney questioned, standing behind the detective's desk to look at the files as well. Jardin clicked a pen in his hand before going over to attend a different file. Oh, yeah. Each of the victims knew each other, or they went to school together, he said, pulling up an old class photo with certain people circled. None of these disappearances happened until Tobias's house burned away. The victims just so happened to be the people on the athletic team, like football, cheer, and baseball. McKinney raised an eyebrow. What does that have to do with anything? She asked. Jardin shrugged. Well, high schoolers are assholes. They probably picked Tobias because they were quote-unquote better. Jardin said, not really sugarcoating the truth. And what about her? McKinney pointed to the separate picture, Wyan's photo. Jordan tossed the pen on his desk. Love interest? Jordan said it hesitantly, scratching the back of his neck. McKinney gave him a bland look. She has no connections or records to being a bad person, except for... Jordan paused, typing on his laptop. Except for what? McKinney said, staring at the screen in front of her. Jordan pulled up a picture of Brad. This is one of the victims. He was supposedly with YN since high school. He also played football and basketball. Jordan said, turning his chair to look at McKinney. Are you trying to tell me that this is some love story between some killer and a random girl? McKinney said. She was totally not convinced of the story, but they needed something if they wanted to arrest the person behind the crime. Yes, but there's a lot more to it. Jordan closed his laptop. Standing on his feet, McKinney sighed. Then, let's get this wild goose chase started. Chapter 29. The Proxy Symbol. Toby tensed up, and his head shot to the front door. Ryan looked at Toby with the same worry he had on his own face. Toby got up and crept to the bedroom to get a shirt. Ryan went up to the window, peeking behind the curtain. There was a male police officer standing outside the door with his hands on his hips. Ryan immediately shrunk away from the window, closing the curtain back. Toby put on a dark green tank top, and Toby looked at YN. She mouthed the words, police officer, and pointed to the door. Toby nodded, tucking his pocket knife into his pocket. His hand lingered over the door handle, thinking a few sentences ahead, then opening the door. He really didn't feel like having to kill off a policeman today, but if it came to that, he wouldn't hesitate. The officer looked up at Toby before speaking. Sorry for bothering you, but we've been on the lookout for suspicious activity in these woods. Would you mind telling me if you've seen anything? The officer asked. Toby's mind blanked. He stared at the officer before clearing his throat. He expected some handcuffs to be brought out, or maybe a handgun, but the officer had no idea he was a murderer. Toby thought that he would have been a bit startled by his appearance, especially startled by the gaping scar on his cheek, yet the officer didn't seem fazed for some reason. An idea dawned on him, and he leaned against the doorframe. Nope, it's completely fine. I wasn't very busy, and for the suspicious activity, I haven't seen much. Not a lot of people come this deep in the woods, no? Toby casually said. The words felt like they just came to him naturally, or as if it was somebody else speaking through him. Okay, thank you for your time, and sorry for wasting your time. The officer nodded with a sigh, walking back to his police car. Have a nice evening. Toby smiled before closing the door. Toby looked at Ryan, and Ryan looked at Toby. They both looked at each other with a confused expression. I thought we were gonna get busted, Ryan said, slumping against the couch. Toby nodded slowly, peeking out the window and watching the cop leave. I thought I would too, Toby said, thinking to himself. That officer seemed awfully calm. Toby felt a slight pressure on the back of his neck, and his hand went to touch it. The mark. The proxy symbol. It was the only thing that has ever afflicted pain to him. Toby's breath hitched, and a deep wave of dread creeped up Toby's spine, making the bile in his stomach creep up his throat. His eyes widened, and he rushed to the bathroom. Ryan watched in shock as Toby booted away, feeling very uneasy all of a sudden. Leaning over the toilet before heaving, his eyes stung with involuntary tears as he vomited time after time. A few tears escaped his eyes as he gasped for a few breaths. He had puked up blood. Toby winced and spat the remnants of the metallic taste into the toilet. His body was shaking with a little bit in shock at the sudden rush. Ryan stood in the doorway, looking at Toby, who seemed to be looking like he was about to faint. Toby flushed the toilet, closing his eyes as he regained his bearings. What just happened? Ryan asked, her disgust being pushed away with concern. Toby took in a deep breath before standing up shakily. He went over to the sink to brush the taste out of his mouth with some toothpaste and a toothbrush. He was not ready to have this conversation with YN. It was too soon. Too much, but he couldn't lie. not to her. It's just something that happens every once in a while. It usually happens when my boss comes around after a while, Toby said flatly, sounding a little muffled from the toothbrush. That didn't ease any emotions that 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 felt. All right, his cult thing. Are you okay? She asked in a small voice. Her head leaned against the doorframe. Toby's face softened at her question, and he wrapped an arm around her, pulling her into a hug. I'm all right. I promise. Toby said softly, holding his toothbrush in his mouth to hold her in with both arms. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 nodded and buried her face in his neck. Toby rested his non-scarred cheek on the top of her head, mostly because he didn't want the toothpaste to leak out of his mouth. But then a thought came to mind, an utterly terrifying thought. What would Slender Man think of this? He'd burnt down a house that wasn't part of the plan. He killed someone he wasn't supposed to. He had a relationship. He loved someone. Toby bit his lip, squeezing 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 a little tighter before letting her go and spitting out the toothpaste. He rinsed the tiny brush and put it back in the cup. How about we make dinner? Toby said, giving her a smile. He didn't want 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 to worry any more than she already was. To tell her that she was in danger now and that he was the primary cause of it. And it would send her into a spiral. You want to help? 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked, brushing Toby's bangs away from his forehead. He chuckled. I wouldn't have said we if I wanted you to make it alone, Toby said. Besides, I wouldn't force you to make me food. He slid an arm around her waist and walked to the kitchen. While Toby did say he was going to help, he had no idea how to cook. Oh my god. It was a sad thought considering he was a grown man, but cooking was never really needed when he had microwavable food and ramen. At least he knew how to boil water. For the most part, he would stand behind 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 and hug her waist while she cooked, or he would taste test things 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 asked him to. Toby couldn't feel hunger pains, but he loved eating, which is probably why he was moody half the time he was alone. He really got good to eat good food. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 made a teriyaki noodles with some vegetables and bits of steamed something mixed in. Toby thought that it could have been one of the most delicious looking meals he's ever seen. They sat down with their plates and dug in with a fork. It was just as good as it looked. Toby looked at 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 and felt like he owed her a better explanation of why he does what he does, work-wise. I work for a guy. Big, tall guy. He's not really what people would call normal. In fact, he's really not even human. It's more supernatural. I can feel him when he's around me. It's a god-awful feeling. I do these missions for him, and I'm good at it. I'm good at my job, and even though it's the dirty work, I have to do what he says or else, I don't know. It's a kind of debt I have to him. He helps me, I help him. All while looking a little bit. Okay, this got worded in a weird way. I'm just gonna say something about insanity, Toby said with a light chuckle, twirling his fork in a pile of noodles before taking a bite. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 nodded, stabbing into some of the food with a fork. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 still had a few questions, but they could be pushed off to a later date. Now that she was full, she realized just how uncomfortable she was in wet clothes. I think I'm gonna change, 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 said, eating the last bit of noodles on her plate and sticking her dishes into the sink. All right, babe. Toby smirked with a mouthful of food. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿's head turned back, blush painting her cheeks and nose. Toby shrugged. What? I thought it would be a nice change of pace, he said, going to get a second plate of noodles. Sure, but just don't come in while I'm changing, 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 said, shaking her head as he went to the bedroom. It depends. Would I get another makeout sesh if I came in? He teased, even though he was only half joking, since that's what happened when she walked in on him changing. 𝐀𝐻𝐻𝐿 didn't even comment on it before shutting the door behind her. her face warm and flustered. How stupid could he be? Chapter 30. Timber. What do you mean you didn't ask his name? Detective Jardin asked impatiently of the officer in front of him. It's late at the station, but everyone is awake or out doing their shift patrolling the forest. The only person out there was an old man in a cabin. He seemed around 50 or 55 at most. The male officer said, he wasn't what your description said. Jardin sighed in frustration and slight exhaustion from this case, but he couldn't file it away again. He needed this case. You really just left it at that? What if he was lying? What if Jardin was cut off by the chief of police who bursted into the room? We need to call back all remaining patrolling officers this instant, the chief commanded. Pointing to a few people who were working at the desk, they immediately jumped, starting with the loud interruption. What is this all about? Jardin asked, looking around the room with a confused expression. The commander looked like he was about to explode in anger and fear all at once. I've had 3 cars and 6 men go missing in that damn forest in the last 3 hours, he raged. Everyone in the room slowly fell silent. Jardin stepped up in a bit of shock. Missing? You mean you can't contact them? What about the trackers built into the cars? The chief of police ran his hand through his thinning gray hair. Not a trace can be found. They have not been responding in the past few hours, Jardin. If you don't call back the remaining team within the next 10 minutes, I will make sure that you will never find work again. The chief of police was more than pissed. The detectives couldn't believe it. People had gone missing in that forest. Jardin quickly told the person at the computer to call all the officers back to the station as quickly as they could. Those rumors were total bullshit after all. Switch of point of view, guys. Wyan decided to take a shower because Toby threw her in the mud. While Wyan showered, Toby picked up the stuff around the bedroom. It was mostly clothes and shoes. Toby picked up his coat off the bedroom floor, and there was a small metal clink. He looked down to see Wyan's old engagement ring. He knelt over and picked it up, turning and inspecting it. It was pretty, and it had 3 diamonds, 1 large one in the center and 2 smaller ones on the outside, and a gold band. Toby looked at the bathroom door before putting the ring on a high shelf, so she couldn't find it. He folded his coat and put it on his desk chair. Another wave of sickness was washing over him, but this one wasn't as strong. Toby knew he would have a mission soon. He could feel it in his gut. He would love to rip apart some of the scum of the earth with his hatchets, cutting them open and lighting their insides on fire. But at the thought of leaving Wyan alone at the cabin worried him. Toby felt an itch to bite at his hands, to wash away the worries that filled his head, but he clenched his fist. He heard the shower in the bathroom turn off, and he was snapped out of his thoughts. The glint of his hatchets caught his eyes as he slowly looked over at the 2 sharp weapons. Swiftly, he grabbed his jacket, slipped on his boots, and put his orange goggles on his head. He then took 1 hatchet, his newer one. Toby went to the bathroom door and knocked on it with his knuckles. Hey, Wyan, I'm going on a walk. I should be back in a little bit, Toby said. The stinging sensation of his proxy symbol started up again. Be careful, Toby reminded her. Oh, all right, Wyan said from behind the door. She cracked it open, only to reveal her face and some of her wet hair. Some of the steam from the inside of the bathroom clouded out. Toby didn't expect that. Wyan grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him closer. Her lips grazed his before she gave him a kiss goodbye. Toby's cheeks turned a rosy color as Wyan shut the door back. The sickness in his stomach mixed with the sense of embarrassment he felt. Bye-bye, Toby said, his voice softening by a ton. His boots clomped against the floor as he left the cabin. He made sure he had all his things and shut the door behind him. He debated whether or not he should lock the cabin so Wyan couldn't get out of it, but he figured he could trust her enough to leave her alone. Toby started to whistle as he walked down through the woods. He went off the trail, swatting away any prickly foliage that was in his way with his hatchet. A smile printed on his face as he thought of the little kiss they had before he left. The woods weren't too quiet. There were some crickets chiming and birds singing their songs as the sun started to set. Toby was thinking about how nice the weather was when he heard a rumble in the distance. His head swiveled, and his eyes caught on one of the winding dirt trails. There was a police officer that was slowly driving down the narrow road. Toby dove behind one of the thick trees, watching him like a hawk. The car stopped on the trail, the brakes squeaking as it did. A breeze blew through the area, making the trees creak and rattle. Toby clenched his hatchet in his left hand, trying to see who was in the vehicle. Silence fell over the forest like a suffocating blanket. One of the trees next to the car croaked, and it fell on the backseat of the car, crushing it. The car's siren made one last wail before it went quiet, and a cop hurried out of the car, cursing. Toby's eyes widened, not in surprise, but in knowing what would happen next. The spot on his neck stung again. It felt horrible. He watched until the officer had his back to him, who was obviously confused. Toby knew exactly what happened to the car. The Slender Man is the only one with enough power to manipulate the forest. The pain got worse and worse until he couldn't handle it. Toby sprinted to the car. He hopped on the hood before bringing the blunt end of the hatchet down on the man's skull. POV change. Wyan scrunched the water out of her hair with the towel. Her body finally felt relaxed now that she wasn't sticky or muddy. She hung up the towel and ruffled her hair. She looked in the mirror, looking just as good as she felt. She smiled, reaching for her toothbrush and putting some minty toothpaste on the bristles. She started to brush her chompers, which felt nice after not having access to a toothbrush in days. Wyan's brushing slowed as she tasted something other than the minty toothpaste. It was some sort of coppery and cold liquid that mixed with her saliva. Her face scrunched up, and she spat out the contents out of her mouth into the sink. Thick, black goo dripped in clumps from her mouth. She let out a shriek of horror and gagged at the foreign feeling on her tongue. Wyan spat out the goop a few more times before it was completely gone. It almost looked like it was leeches or some sort of alien. She threw her toothbrush across the bathroom, and it landed on the shower floor. What the hell is that? Chapter 31. Wires. Toby creaked the door open with his hatchet. His coat and pants were sprayed with ruby-colored blood. The goggles that rested on top of his head dripped with the same fresh crimson that stained his clothes. The soles of his boots were covered in mud from the freshly rained ground. He had a dull look in his eyes and in his mind. A fresh numbness from the night's kills swept over his form. At least the job was done. For now. He mindlessly kicked off his boots near the door and stepped inside, locking the door behind him with a click. The house was quiet. So quiet that it almost made his ears ring. Toby peeled off his coat and goggles, tossing them on the table. The voices were appeased. He could rest now. Toby moped his way down to the bedroom. His thoughts still seemed hazy from the effects of adrenaline that were slowly leaving his system. His hand opened the door slowly. The light from the hallway bled into the room, where Wyan was passed out on the bed. Her chest was lifting and easing with each soft breath in her sleep. Toby gently set his hatchet in the corner of the room, making sure to be as quiet as possible. He shut the door behind him and took off his shirt. He crawled into bed next to Wyan, feeling a slight relief that she was okay. Wyan rolled over in her sleep, facing Toby. Toby stared at her face, the pale light making her features glow. He pulled her against his chest. Her heartbeat was pumping the sweet life force through her, the same life force he had taken away from multiple police officers who trespassed in his forest. Toby's fingers twirled in her hair as he stared as he started to shut his eyes. He could smell the faint shampoo in her hair, which was a lot better than the smell of dirt and blood. His thoughts soon drifted into sleep. Wyan woke up in the middle of the night. She looked around to see that she was on the ground in the middle of the woods, her body filled with dread, and she glanced around. Pine trees towered over her like mountains, and everything was quiet. She sat up and tried to speak, but anything she said got stuck in her throat. Her eyes brimmed with tears as she saw something unnatural. A tall figure, one that could have been at least 8 feet in height. It had no features and was paler than white. It wore a formal black tuxedo with a black tie. There were 8 black appendages that snaked out of its back and looked like they were dripping black ooze. Wyan tried to move, but her muscles were frozen as the being approached. She felt herself start to sob as the being was feet away from her. The being's tendrils curled around her throat and skull, crushing them in the process. She could feel pressure building in her head, cracking her soul. She screamed and cried until she felt warm, calloused hands on her arms. Wyan's eyes shot open to see the outlines of Toby's face in the dark. Wyan's face was stained with tears, and her throat felt dry, along with a throbbing pain in her head. Toby looked concerned and gave her shoulders a gentle squeeze. "Hey, Wyan, it's okay. It's just a dream," he murmured, brushing the hair from her eyes. Her forehead glistened in sweat, and she took in a trembling breath. She couldn't express the relief she felt of seeing a familiar face. A few more tears fell from her eyes, and she scooted herself closer. "My head hurts." Wyan put her hands on her temples and applied pressure. Toby sat up with her in his arms while rubbing her back. He pressed his lips against her temple. Wyan wiped the tears from her cheeks, resting her head on his shoulder. "What happened in your dream?" Toby asked, running his fingers through her hair. Wyan took a deep breath and started to explain what she saw. But the dream became blurry in her thoughts. Her eyebrows furrowed together as she struggled to remember her nightmare. "I forgot." Wyan rubbed her eyes with one hand, pushing the blanket off of her waist. Toby's hand slowly retracted from her as he tried to figure out what to say. "Do you want to stay up a little longer?" Toby suggested. Wyan nodded, trying to collect her bearings. Toby softly said, "Okay," and he looked around the room. His eyes caught on the plush raccoon he had gifted her, and he grabbed it, offering it to her for some sort of comfort. Wyan looked at the raccoon before slowly taking it, though her expression still seemed troubled. Toby noticed the stuffy didn't help much, and he got up to get her water. He poured a glass of ice water and brought it to her, wanting to somehow help her. He didn't know much about comforting people through night terrors, but water at night was always good. Wyan accepted the glass and took a sip. It was refreshing at first, but the icy taste soon turned into a warm, metallic substance. Her face twisted into a queasy look, and she leaned over the edge of the bed, spitting onto the hardwood floor. The same black ooze came out of her mouth. Toby's face went pale, more pale than normal. "What is that?" Toby shouted in alarm, taking the water away from her and putting it on the desk. He took Wyan's hair, holding it back while she spat out the rest of it. "I don't know." Wyan's voice wavered, and she started to cry again. The dread and confusion was starting to get to her. She spat more of the thick liquid onto the floor, her hands trembling. Toby sat next to her, looking at the pile of muck on the floor. His face curled into disgust, then anger. His anger wasn't towards her, but it was projected at what the hell was doing this to her. Who would do such a thing? The audacity of what was happening made Toby feel protective of Wyan. "It's all right, just let it all out," Toby said softly, pulling a few loose strands of hair away from her face. He was just as scared as Wyan. Nothing like this has ever happened to him. The worst thing he's had was just throwing up some blood. Wyan shuddered and squeezed her eyes shut. "There's no more," Wyan said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. The goo on the floor soaked into the wood floors, and when Toby got the chance to clean it up, it was gone. Toby let go of her hair, marveling in fear at the revelation. Toby let his hands fall to his lap, his mind reeling. Wine used her trembling hands to wipe her face. Toby leaned closer to her, his rough hand on the small of her back. Wyatt felt herself lean into his touch, pressing her face into his neck. A wave of warmth washed over her, and her eyes went half-lidded. Wine's breath brushed against his neck, making his eyes widen in surprise. Her soft lips pressed against his skin, kissing his jaw. Toby paused, his face turning red. He leaned away from Wyan, confused about the sudden change in mood. Wyan, what are you doing? Toby smirked, putting a hand on her upper arm. Wyan stared at Toby, her eyes darting to it. Excuse me, my English. Wyan stared at Toby, her eyes darting down to his lips. What do you mean? She asked, her words coming out slowly, as if she were confused by her own actions too. Toby looked surprised as he saw the look in her eyes. A lustful look. His stomach turned as he tried to keep himself calm and collected. Despite the heat growing, and you know where, Wine went in to kiss him, this time on the lips. Toby grabbed her wrist and pushed her down, pinning her to the bed below them. Or. This is chapter 32. Esctacy. Read with caution. Author's note. This is a chapter that is a bit raunchy. I promise it's for the plot, lol, so be prepared. And by the way, y'all are so thirsty. If you guys have read the comments, you would understand the author, because I'm like, yeah, I love me some Wattpad comments. I love it. We gonna read a little bit of it, and if I really feel like it, we'll read the whole thing. I don't know, y'all, but I'm not gonna lie, I might not be able to keep a straight face. Or maybe not even as. Y'all did basically vote for it too. I can't believe 97 people said, percent of people said. Anyways, getting into it. Toby looked down. Ryan wrapped her legs around his waist, his hand pinning her arms against the mattress. Toby's face turned a bright red, with a few pieces of hair dangling in his face. What are you doing? Toby asked, looking into her eyes. Without response, blush crept up Wine's face too, as she instinctively licked her lips. Toby's breath hitched, and he squeezed her wrist a little tighter. He couldn't tell if Wine was just toying with him or not. Well, we gotta find out. Toby leaned down, his face inches from Wine's, as he weighed his options. Surely one kiss wouldn't hurt, right? He pressed his lips against hers, kissing her slowly before his lips started to get more desperate. He sighed into her lips, his tongue finding its way to hers as he explored her mouth. Oh my goodness, we getting right into it. Wine moaned softly at the heated contact, trying to pull him closer with her legs. Oh my goodness. I tell you, I ain't gonna be able to take this shit seriously, but just for y'all, because I haven't been here in a trillion years, and as rightfully y'all deserve, we're gonna see if we can make it through. If we cannot, that's okay. We're gonna attempt, guys. This is attempt number uno of your host, your girl Dreamland, reading this to y'all. So, blaring the alarms, I guess. I got lock in. They're clothed. Yeah, I said it right. Their clothed hips pressing against one another's. Toby parted the kiss breathlessly, a wave of bliss crawling up his spine. We are all alone out here, in the middle of nowhere. I could do whatever I want to you, and no one would ever know. Toby whispered in a husky tone as he nipped at her ear, his scratchy stubble tickling her cheek. Wine's face heated up at his remark, and she shivered, helpless and speechless in his grasp. Toby moved to pin both of Wine's hands above her head with one of his hands. His free hand slipped down her arm, roaming the skin under her shirt as his lips started to attack her neck. He bit and sucked at her neck, leaving blemishes in its wake. I don't know how I'm going to read this with a straight face, but we're going to find out. If it gets hella explicit, we're going to maneuver over it. We'll see. Wine bit her lip enough to draw... Wine bit her lip enough to draw blood, all in an attempt to stifle any noises. Toby's hand grazed her stomach and gave her breast a soft squeeze. A noise of pleasure escaped her throat, and Toby let go of her wrist to push her shirt above her head. Wine's face flushed, and she covered her chest with her arms. "Let me see," Toby said, kissing the spot under her ear as he moved her arms away. Toby's face flushed at her beauty, and he started to kiss her from her neck down to the middle of her chest, to her stomach. Toby's kisses felt like fire against her skin. She squirmed beneath him as the tension grew hotter. Oh my goodness gracious! We sound a little possessive here. Okay. I think a little more. This is a work in progress. No, y'all are like, hurry up. Oh my goodness. Anyways. Oh my god. Casper? Sorry guys, my cat just interrupted me. Scared the fuck out of me. Oh my goodness. Hi, baby. Cover your ears. We're reading explicit content now. Anyways. Let's see, where were we? Oh, fuck. Toby groaned against her skin, and his pants started to feel a little tighter and tighter with each kiss. His hands caressed down her sides and to her hips. His eyes met Wine's, and they had the same look of love and lust for each other. Toby's mind was clouded with desire, and he gripped Wine's waist. I don't know how I'm going to say this with a straight face, guys, but we just going to pretend. Mine. Toby, oh my god, his hardness straining against his pants. Oh shit, sorry guys, I accidentally rocked my headphones. Crap. Toby's hips started to move on hers, grinding their neededness together. The only barrier between them was their pants. Wine's breath started to grow heavy, and she pushed her hips into his. Basically grinding, guys. Wine gripped Toby's shoulders tightly as ecstasy ran through her core. Oh my god. The me reading it is fine, but they're actually talking. It's just I can't do it with a straight face. Okay. She's like, "I need you so badly," Wine said breathlessly. Her nails creating crescents in Toby's skin. Oh yeah, that's a good reference right there. In Toby's skin as she held onto him tighter. Toby nearly lost all his sanity at those simple words, and he nodded. He bit his lip, looking down at Wine as he thought of all the ways he could please her. Interesting. Toby's hands went to the hem of her pants before sliding them down her thighs. Wine made no protest against it as she watched in full anticipation. Toby tossed her pants aside, taking in her vulnerable state that was all for him. Okay, y'all, this is where they get a little Craig, a little juicy. Now, I do not want YouTube to I don't want YouTube to get mad at me, guys. So I'm gonna cut this a little short. I'm sorry, guys, but basically, long story short, he is having a nice dinner between her legs. Like he's a starved man, and also preparing her for the main event. And then, yeah, guys, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure this is with no protection, as pretty sure as I know. And, they're having a little mango tango going on here. And then, yeah, they basically, they did the deed. And then she was like, wait, shit, did you wear a condom? And, yes. Okay, now we can read the bottom here. They both breathed in the afterglow of their lovemaking. Toby slowly removed his softened you-know-what with a wet pop, and he collapsed on top of YN. He put his arms around her waist, making sure he didn't crush her with his weight. She looked over at him, her breath catching her breath. Her haze of lust disappeared as soon as she met the realization of what she had just done. Toby, did you wear a condom? YN asked, her body shining with sweat. She was probably going to have another shower again, even though she just did so a few hours prior. Toby's face flushed red. No, but don't worry, I'm sterile, he said softly as he brushed her hair out of her eyes. YN gave a tired smile, and she closed her eyes for a moment. She realized that she just made love with a murderer, and it felt amazing. We should shower, Toby suggested, leaving one kiss on her forehead before pulling her up. Her legs were still wobbly from the experience, so Toby helped her to the bathroom. They both couldn't help but giggle like teenagers as they hurried to the bathroom, as if they were trying to not get caught. YN ran the water for the shower since she was the one who could feel the temperature. Toby took off his bandages and got in the shower. Toby's arms still remained around YN's waist as they both rinsed the sweat off of their bodies. YN felt both satisfied and deeply in love with him. Being a murderer was thrown out the window at this point. She has gotten more out of the past week with him than she has had in the last 10 years with Brad. Eat shit, Brad. Period, sister. After their unwinding shower, they got out. Toby had a towel wrapped around his waist, and YN had a towel wrapped around her chest and lower body. Toby couldn't help but give her a kiss on the cheek as his eyes looked at the mess they made of her neck. At the mess he made of her neck. Sorry about that. I didn't realize how many hickeys I gave you. It was too dark in there. Toby chuckled, his hand around her waist. YN smirked. You think that's bad? You should see her back, she said, turning so he could see the damage in the mirror. His eyes widened. His cheeks turned a pretty pink. Then I guess we're even, Toby said as he went to put on some shorts. YN went also to his side of the dresser. Toby found it hilarious that he got her tons of her own clothes, yet she wanted to wear his. He didn't make any fuss about it. After they got comfortable clothes on, they went back to bed with YN in Toby's arms. Damn near. This man got his goals with ease. Oof. All right, y'all. So, what an eventful night they had, huh, guys? Well, anyways, I'm so sad to disappoint that this is the last chapter we's gonna be reading for this video. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed it. What do y'all think is gonna happen next? Do you guys think that what's the name? The detectives and or the police officers will be able to find the truth, or will they die trying? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, for one more extra credit type question. Do you guys think that YN in the end will end up working by Toby's side and or / Slenderman be her new boss? Or some sort of that kind where she'll have to kill or something else? Let me know in the comments down below, guys. Because I'm honestly curious. I don't know. But I'm going to find out with y'all. So my guess is as good as y'all's. If you guys enjoyed my attempt also at reading the smut and or lemon, a quote unquote, let's say quote unquote attempt. If y'all appreciated it, thank you. If y'all want to encourage me to attempt to try some more in case some other stories may or may not potentially have some, let me know. Just give me in the comments down below, just go ahead and just put a random emoji. Yeah, put that emoji down there if you wanted me to continue attempting to read smut to you guys, because Because, I mean, why not? Why not? You know, this is not for younger audiences, anywho. Well, better not be. Anyway, try not to get off track here. I hope you guys did enjoy this, though. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing videos, guys. Hopefully gonna be posting soon and editing soon, guys. I started on a whole new editing software thing. Keep updated on the communities. I'm probably gonna post about that pretty soon. Probably by the time way before this video is gonna be posted. Anyways, love you guys so much. Stay safe. And don't make any horrible decisions and live your life, guys. Bye and peace, y'all.